Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you this week. There is a new Toyota 4Runner. After 15 years, give or take, we finally have a new one. So we're going to break that down and tell you maybe which one you might want to get. We know a little bit about the trim breakdown as well. There's also going to be a new Corvette ZR1. There's something called the Alfa Romeo Milano. It's a mouthful there, and I'm Italian. The BMW M5 wagon's a thing, and of course, there's news out of Tesla and Disney. We'll talk about what we've been driving, including the Supra and the Corolla. With that, I'll bring in senior editor for all things electric and green, John Snyder. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It is raining. I think I need my aqua car.
Yeah, it's pretty miserable out there. I ran out to get lunch, and it's just like that hard, cold drizzle that we all know and love. But, it's been interspersed with these absolutely gorgeous days too. Spring in Michigan, it's, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. Or in the case of today, it's supposed to rain like all day. So. It's
rough. I've been looking for a window to walk the dog, but it hasn't really stopped raining. So We'll see. It's yesterday it was about close to 70 and sunny, and I even hit the driving range for a little bit. It was beautiful, but not that way today. So a vehicle that's good for all seasons is the Toyota 4Runner. How's that for a transition? We've got a new one. James Riswick, our senior editor up and down the West Coast, was on the West Coast checking it out. So check out his stories. The headlines are what you would expect. New powertrain. It gets that Toyota hybrid that's used in a lot of their different crossovers. Refreshed styling, but it still looks exactly like you would expect. Updated interior, and it has new electronic system. There's new, so like that infotainment finally comes into, 20, this century. Let's put it
at long last.
That way. But what do you think of this thing?
I think it's really cool. I love the way it looks. I love that sort of rear wraparound window. I love the muscular fenders. I love the Trail Hunter trim. It just looks really cool. I'm curious. It really has me curious of the price breakdown of these, because I'm also interested in that hybrid with the Max hybrid powertrain. That could be pretty compelling, even though you lose the third row with the hybrid. But that's a good hybrid powertrain, and just curious as price breakdown, and also curious as to how it will actually drive. But I imagine it'll feel pretty familiar, maybe a little better, maybe a little bit more composed, a little less squatty and divey. But honestly, like just bringing it up to contemporary standards in terms of the interior and the technology is huge. It'll make it highly more livable for those of us who like a little bit of tech and take advantage of it. There's something charming about the previous 4Runner and its sort of archaic tech that was very simple and basic, and sort of harken back to a simpler time. But I think for the way we use our cars now, having the updated tech is just going to be a huge quality of life improvement.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've driven, in the last few months, I've driven all sorts of Toyotas and, Lexus vehicles. I actually just got out of the TX.
Nice.
I don't love their infotainment. I wouldn't say it's the best, but I wouldn't say it's the worst. Either way, the Game Boy, Tetris interface they had before was, it was just basically unacceptable. But again, it was from 2009, basically, the roots of it. So they did tweak this over the years to do some things to it. But this was largely unchanged since like literally the first days of Obama's term. Like this is like, think back to 2009. This goes way back. But the new platform, it's shared with the Toyota Tacoma and lots of other Toyota crossovers and larger vehicles. So in the hybrid is going to be interesting. I think that will bring some life to the 4Runner. I think just the old powertrain was so dated. I mean, that 5-speed automatic was laborious.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah,
definitely sort of dragged down its potential in terms of performance and fuel economy.
I said this before. I never thought the powertrain in the 4Runner was anything special for obvious reasons. I feel like that was just the like equipment they had handy back at the time, and they used it. I like I said, I don't think this is like, the Jeep 4-liter or anything like special like that. This isn't a Chevy small block. So literally putting any sort of modern powertrain in there to make it a little more drivable will be a good thing. For me, it's always been about the styling. Yeah. And the fact that it's pretty roomy inside.
Yeah.
And just from a daily driving perspective, I think it's the best, like, hard edge off-roader. Like, I think always driving a 4Runner has always been a more pleasant experience to go pick up a pizza, to go to 7-Eleven, to throw the kids in, than to drive a Jeep Wrangler or, the Ford Bronco even. So
I totally agree. I would much rather live with this on a day-to-day basis and still have it for off-roading than I would drive one of those other ones day-to-day. I'd probably rather have the Wrangler for off-roading. But I mean, the 4Runner is actually, it's really good for it. It's proven itself. And the fact that it can be considerably more comfortable and easy to drive, after running errands in it and taking kids to school and driving stop and go traffic, up and down city streets, making a lot of turns, your arms aren't tired at the end of the day in the previous 4Runner. I imagine it'll just be even better now. So, if I'm looking for one thing to sort of do it all in terms of family and, outdoor adventuring, definitely would pick the 4Runner over the Ford or the Jeep.
To drill down a little bit into that hybrid, that iForce Max, as they call it, you're going to get an 8-speed automatic transmission, which replaces that 5-speed from, Fred Flintstone's car. The 2.4-liter Turbo 4 with the hybrid stuff, that replaces the V6, which was a 4-liter. You're going to go from 270 horsepower and 278 pound-feet of torque to 326 horsepower. That's pretty healthy. Yeah. 465 pound-feet of torque, which that torque is going to really change the character of this vehicle.
Sure. Both on-road and having the extra torque is great off-road too. Always helps you with those low-speed crawls, getting over obstacles and whatnot. But I think this hybrid powertrain is great. It's not going to be, I don't think it's geared toward efficiency as much as some of Toyota's other hybrid powertrains, but still it'll be good for the performance that it puts out.
And there is a 2.4-liter Turbo 4 with the 8-speed, and I just drove this in the TX, actually, the Lexus. And that gets you 278 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. So those are both still upgrades from that old V6. So
yeah, for sure.
And it's actually a little bit longer than the 2024 model. I find that interesting. You're getting about roughly 3 to 4 inches, probably depending on the trim. So
bigger all around.
Of course.
Which if you are going off road, a little more compact is better for breakover angles and all that. But it just means you could do more with it. You can pack more gear in it. You can pack more people comfortably, you can just sort of go on more adventures in all types of weather and terrain.
Right now, I'm very torn because in my lifetime, not in my lifetime, but you have to go back when we were much younger for this like wide variety of pretty cool off-roaders. If I were to decide, hey, I need a car tomorrow, and I needed it to be for some family use, but we also have a 3-row SUV. So that means the one that perhaps the second car could be something that's a little bit smaller, or at least smaller than a 3-row SUV. That's where you could have some fun. What off-roader do I want it to be? It could be the 4Runner with a 3rd row. It could be the Lexus GX, which I think is very cool. I mean, I haven't driven that yet, but I feel like Lexus generally does a better job than Toyota with its suspension tuning. So you get a better daily driver. You pay for it. So there's that. Jeep Wrangler or Ford Bronco. I mean, it's I could be happy with all of them. But I have a sneaky feeling that the 4Runner, which is where I've always landed, is the way I would go. Do you have a lean so far? And I know you probably haven't driven half of these, but I mean, yeah.
I don't know. The I really like the looks of the Lexus GX. I wouldn't want to pay the extra money, but it's solid, and if it's a car, if it's a car that you're going to keep for a really long time, which my family tends to do. That's not a bad way to go. The Lexus or the Toyota.
Yeah.
If I'm buying it as a second car, in addition to we've got the Palisade that we can use for family duties, then and something I'm not going to drive on as much on a day-to-day basis, running those errands, dropping off those kids and stuff, then I'd probably go with the Wrangler.
Yeah.
I just I've always loved off-roading in a Jeep. It's just it feels right, and it's super capable, and that's fun. You can take the doors off and all that, and the kids love it. And,
that's true.
super
that's
plastic
the other.
Looking.
If I asked my son, he'd say get the Wrangler because he loves Jeeps. So, but I do think I'd probably prefer driving the 4Runner most days of my life. You know what I mean? It's just
I agree with that. Yes.
So, all right. So you got to check out all of our coverage on site. We look at the history of the 4Runner. We compare it to some of these other Toyota off-roaders we've mentioned. We have a breakout on the Trail Hunter, which looks sick. You got to check that one out too. So head over to the site. We have you covered on all things 4Runner.
Indeed, we do.
All right, let's talk about let's go from the off-roading to, also off-roading, but a different place, like the track, with the Corvette ZR1, Chevy teased one. Something's coming this summer, and it's just around the corner, we think. And we don't really know anything else other than it's about time that Chevy adds a ZR1 to the Corvette portfolio. We don't really know much else. Like I said, it could be a higher output version of the V8 that's in the Z06. Could be that, but we don't really know. So, I mean, I'm psyched. I'm stoked, but we'll see. I think what'll also be interesting here is they're going to find a way, however they do it, to get the power to be crazy.
Yeah.
I'll be curious what they do with the aero, how they integrate that into the design, what else they do with the wheels and the brakes. So we'll see.
Yeah, they released that teaser with some sound in it, and boy, it sounds real good. It definitely sounds heavy on the turbo. So take that for what you will. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they come up with. The hypo Corvettes are they're always fun to see and to hear and to drive when you get the chance. But for me, seriously, the base Corvette is where it's at for me. Yeah. I mean, that thing is it's like the everyman's. It's almost an exotic in its looks and the way it drives, but much more affordable, and but I do foresee my son and his friends, the the ZR1 is going to be all they talk about for a while. It's going to be, posters on walls sort of thing, which is great. If you're a Corvette fan and looking for the ultimate Corvette, this is pretty exciting.
I mean, I think pound for pound, horsepower per horsepower, the Corvette in even its base trims is, I think, the best sports car value in America.
Oh yeah, it's just incredible.
Mid-engine exotic for a very reasonable price.
Yeah, and it's even just that base car is very, very memorable. That you just, it's very unique. It's got its total own identity, and you sort of never forget it, even if you just drive it for a few days. And the fact that it's attainable too is just awesome. Someday. Yeah. Someday when I've got room in the garage, and the thing is, people will be fighting over who gets to ride in it.
Yeah.
4 people in the family. I think my son would fight anyone in the family to be the one that gets to run on whatever trip across town with me for it.
All right. Well, so that's the ZR1. We'll keep you posted as we know more. It's definitely going to be a story we are following closely.
Yeah, coming this summer, summer of. Is it this? It's this summer, right?
It is this summer, yeah. And that's right on time too. That's usually, they've done the different, variants, and now it's time for the ZR1. That's the range topper. So. Yeah. One of my neighbors, I think, has a 20-year-old ZR1, which I think is really cool.
That is cool.
I've been walking, when I walk the dog by his house, I usually find a reason to walk up the driveway and stare at it. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool. So, all right, let's talk about the Alfa Romeo Milano. Mm-hmm. It is a beautiful electric car. It's related to the Jeep Avenger. We won't get it, but I felt like we kind of need to at least riff on this a little bit because it's an Alfa EV, and they take some of their, I think it's one of the coolest looking Alfas I've seen in some time. And they do styling well.
Yeah.
I think you can pan Alfa for a number of things, but I think styling isn't one of them. And this is a good looking little EV. It's about the size of, say, a Kia Soul, and it's got that very throwback Alfa Romeo grille. I mean, that's like straight out of the 20s, the 1920s.
Yeah, there's a couple different versions of the grille too, but that one looks good. The other one, with like the logo sort of covering the whole thing, does not look good in my opinion.
Which one? The one? Oh, the logo one. Okay.
Yeah, with like the cutouts and
I don't get that. You almost can't even see it.
Yeah, but the one with the mesh pattern, the like diamond mesh pattern, and the Alfa Romeo script across it diagonally, that one looks great. That one looks real good.
This one kind of brings the ethos of the Giulietta, which they never sold here. Another small Alfa that I thought was really cool. I drove that once, actually. I think Bosch brought it here as part of like a supplier promotion thing. And it was really cool. It sort of became the Dodge Dart for our shores. But I always thought the Alfa version was better. And this one, when you look at some of the design cues, and they managed to make a small EV special. So, I mean, honestly, when I look at this looks way cooler to me than the EX30 that Volvo has been making such a big deal about.
They include a lot of details and like little distinguishing features and shapes and things that really make it look super sporty. It's I don't know, if it'll actually feel that way, but it definitely looks the part. And then those wheels are really cool too. It's another thing Alfa does well, is wheel designs, very unique and very sporty looking. And just all around this car, looking around inside and out, the from the logos to the different accents and emblems to the lighting to the wheels to the shape of the seat backs and the headrests and the even some of the dash elements. It all just looks really good, and like they took a lot of time fine tuning those finer details.
All right. So, car we expect to have some finer details will be the BMW M5. And that includes, surprise, surprise, a Touring, which is European speak for wagon. It's going to come here. One of their top designers, that's a BMW top designer, kind of let the cat out of the bag a while ago. But then BMW denied it, kind of didn't really say what was going on. But now it's going to happen. They dropped it in a press release, and boom, here it is. 7th gen with production starting in the 4th quarter. So this will be fun. I mean, what auto journalist doesn't like a M5 wagon or almost any station wagon, right?
Right.
So this should be pretty sick.
Yeah. BMW wagons are just a great thing to have in existence.
Right.
And it is, I mean, that is a car that I would love to own. I would love to own an M5 wagon. I really like the M5 in general, particularly like just the standard M5. Don't need the competition or any of the other higher sporty trims. I want a little bit of comfort. I don't want to be sitting directly on carbon fiber and whatnot. But yeah, one thing. I mean, two things. Wagon and a manual would be the perfect M5. So
yeah, no, that's true.
So we're getting the wagon here, and it's going to bring back memories for sure.
All right, that's another one that will probably around midsummer. We'll see more of this one right around that time that ZR1 takes a bow.
Yeah, we don't really exactly know what this is going to look like, but they haven't taken the full wraps off of it. We have seen spy shots there on our website, and then they have with the with the announcement that they're bringing it, they did show it again camouflaged and just a couple angles of it and not in completion, and then another photo of it under a sheet, so you get a sense of the silhouette. But basically what you're looking at there is that long roof. That's the important part.
Yeah, no, I'll be curious too what they do like with the grill, because you may have heard BMW has some interesting takes on grills. With the wagon, there's a lot you can do as well, as far as like really glamming up the design. Maybe they'll make it a little bit like more of a wide kind of stance. I think that would be cool. Honestly, an old BMW wagon is another on my list of daily drivers up there with like a new 4Runner. Doesn't even have to be an M5. Just, that would be up there.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So it's as the world in Tesla and Elon Musk turns, we had some price cuts on the Model Y. This news is about a week old at this point, but it's a thing. It happened. It is cheaper than it's been in a while, which I think is interesting. The rear wheel drive one is about $34,000. That's about as good a deal as you could get for a pretty attractive premium intending EV with a Tesla badge on it. That's compelling.
It is.
I don't know. You going to pick one up?
Well, it's funny because, we're sort of in the market for an EV as a second car. And, in this segment too. So my wife, has said, do what you've always done when we pick a new car, make a spreadsheet. and she's now like, put Tesla on it, which I was surprised to hear her say, because hasn't always been hot on Tesla. So that might be in the mix. Prices could change again, as they often do, but But yeah, right now, I mean, that makes it really compelling, and makes it available for the tax credit too, which is a big selling point. And yeah, I mean, solid EV with good range and a good price. Yeah, makes it. Yeah, I'm still thinking we're going to end up looking very closely at the Mach-E.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you look at these numbers, you can't overlook this.
Yeah, it's got to be on your list. I mean, I think it's, Teslas are, by and large, interesting EVs. I think the question becomes is then with a lot of strong points in their favor, and it's a really good price point. I think for some people, they have to unpack, how they feel about Elon Musk, which is definitely a complicated, question. And I think you also have to look at and then just from a consumer standpoint, where do you, how do you benchmark it against like an EV6, a Mach-E, an ID4? There's a fair amount of pretty good EVs out there, but just this price is, really like a low Amazon spring sale price. So it's pretty good. And,
it ties you to, I mean, there's more ways now to get access to the supercharger infrastructure, but I mean, that's also a selling point.
Oh, definitely. In some ways, for me, that's almost as big of a selling point if I were looking for an EV would be the supercharger network. And to your point, yes, there's more ways to access it and, all those things, but
especially if it's going to be your primary vehicle, that's something you'll definitely want to consider if you're, this is the car that you're going to take to go visit your aunt in Connecticut or something like that. That's definitely a point to consider. One thing that I think is a point against it is just how many of them there are now, and there isn't really much to visually distinguish one Model Y from another. Which I don't know. I feel like I want a little more character than that. The ability to be able to spot my car in a parking lot and feel special when I look at it. Around here there are a ton of Mach-E's, but you see them in different colors and different trims with different features on them, and they all have their own sort of character. And that's, I don't know, that's one of those things. Cars are a very emotional thing, especially to people like us. And that is one thing that might turn me away from it. But then I'll just picture that stack of $100 bills.
Yeah, there you go.
And, consider it once again.
That's a good point. I mean, that's one way to approach it. That's how, whenever you're making any big purchase, you kind of got to figure, what do you want? And then what path do you take to get there as far as like the money, and there's always compromises.
Yeah.
So, but one reason I think they are making the Model Y so competitive is they've given up on, what were they going to call it? Like a Model 2 or something, like the low cost entry level car.
Yeah.
And that's interesting they did that. The move is then to pivot to robotaxis, which this is very much a Tesla and Elon Musk strategy because, he really believes hardcore in AI and in autonomous driving. So it makes more sense that he would invest in that, which is like the next thing versus just making some Tesla warmed over Ford Focus. What do you think he wants to do? Right.
He wants to change the industry and, advance something. And if you can pull it off, and make it a successful thing, then that'll be really neat. I am not as autonomy it doesn't disgust me as much as it leaves a bad taste in the mouths of a lot of our colleagues. Things that, any alternative to car ownership that allows people to have those same sort of freedoms of mobility, I think is a great thing. I mean, it's there was a big push for it among car makers for a while. It was mobility, and it got kind of almost cliche, and things didn't pan out the way everyone thought. So if Elon Musk can come through and do it and say, "I told you so," I'd give him a round of applause for that.
What I think will be interesting is how he ends up, what the final product is with these. Where is he going to, have these robo-taxis? How is he going to scale it?
Yeah.
That's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. I'm sure he's got some elaborate plan that might just be, in his head and not based on, data or testing, but he would be pioneering it, and he's not afraid to fail. I don't think. Right. I think he's one of those entrepreneurs that really leans into the failure is learning. Failure is data, and so that and his massive resources could mean this actually gets somewhere. So
yeah, it's what I think could really make this like sticky for some sort of trend is, does he actually succeed where Cruise, where some of these other autonomous companies, Waymo, Apple, have not really, they've failed to achieve what they were trying to do. Mm-hmm. If he could do that, maybe that shifts the whole industry, because we've seen Ford pull back from Argo AI. I mean, Argo AI had the backing of Ford, Volkswagen, and Amazon. Right. How do you fail when those are the people giving you money, right?
Yeah.
And Cruise is run by GM, who seems to be totally willing to take, like you said, piles of money, only light them on fire and hand them over to Cruise. So it's like there's some pretty well-financed entities that I think are struggling because right now there isn't really a market for it. I think there could be, for sure. I mean, the idea of it is very appealing. Like you, I'm not against it. I think there's a time and a place for it. For a lot of reasons, it could be good for society.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been sold to us for the past decade or close to it by a lot of big names in the industry, and then sort of that football got pulled away from us, and and then it sort of became a joke. But I don't think, and so I think there might be a lot of skepticism just because of that, because of all the failures on the part of other movers in that space. But if Tesla can do it and create a new blueprint for the industry, like it did with EVs, lightning can strike twice for sure.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about Elon Musk, but he was right about EVs actually gaining a foothold in the market, and he was right about the charging infrastructure.
Yeah.
When other companies either didn't stick with it long enough or didn't have the sheer, frankly, force of his personality to stick with it long enough. So we are talking EVs. Let's talk Disney.
Okay.
Have you ever taken your kids on those rides, the Tomorrowland rides?
Yeah, we did.
Me too.
We did Tomorrowland in Florida when Wally was 4, I think. It was before Lola was born, so and before she was along the way too. So it was pre-COVID anyway. And yeah, we did it, and I was kind of surprised that they weren't already electric. It'd be easier to maintain, and they're noisy. They're you can like see like the grime on them from,
Oh yeah.
from the exhaust and smoke and stuff. And I mean, it's fun. I like them the way they are, but I think it makes sense to go electric. But they're only doing it with California. So
so it's Disneyland, and I mix these up too. Disneyland is going electric, and ironically, those like cars are much newer. Apparently, they were updated with Honda engines or Honda parts and restyled, like somewhere in the teens. So they're not that old. But the ones that you're referencing that I've also been on with my son, the one in Walt Disney World in Florida, those are, according to Riswick, those are from 1971. Those are Briggs and Stratton like motors from, I mean, think about that. Your 6-year-old is driving essentially grandpa's lawnmower. Yeah. That's a lot. I couldn't believe when I rode it. First of all, when I drove them, it was awesome. So much fun. I still remember it. Kind of like a cold January morning. Kid had a blast. But I mean, I was blown away by how terrible they smelled. Mm-hmm. It was, I mean, I have a lawnmower, or I had a lawnmower from probably the 80s or 90s. You'd start that thing up and it was rough. Then you get, this was like next level, which makes perfect sense. So I think, frankly, the Florida one needs an EV even more than perhaps the California one. Yeah. So they got to work the torque a little bit. You can't have like your kid like hammering on the accelerator and taking off like it's a Model S Plaid.
I don't know. If they're on those little mono tracks and they can sort of govern speed based on location of the track, maybe, why not let them floor it down like the straight at least.
Strap them in, grip it, and rip it. I guess. Yeah. It's
and if they're electric, you can easily do more of that stuff. Like have them maintain distance between each other and all that stuff on their own.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So I don't know, kind of cool human interest news. There we go. Let's talk about what we've been driving. We have two pretty fun things, and then we'll talk a little business, which is you've been in the Corolla and the Supra, and I've been in the Kia EV9. So why don't we lead off with the Corolla, because that was the one you were in the most recently.
Yeah. Yep. I was in the GR Corolla. I was in the premium this time. I'd driven the Maurizio edition before. And so this, a little bit less hardcore, actually has a back seat, which was great. Not as exciting though. It's mostly, the same powertrain. The Maurizio gets a little more torque. I think like 295 pound-feet of torque, and this has 273. And between that and the extra weight in this one, I did notice a difference. I noticed that the premium just didn't quite accelerate with the same urgency as the Maurizio. And it was also, a little more, relative to that, it was a little more soft on the road. It's still pretty jarring going over the potholes that are emerging this spring, but I thought it was great. It didn't doesn't the GR Corolla doesn't quite blow my mind in its driving, but it does some things really well. Like it's really grippy, and it rotates really well. You can sort of shift the amount of torque distribution between the front and the rear manually, and you can put more of a rear bias on it, and it'll do some fun stuff. But yeah, it still sounds great. It sounds really good. For a 3-cylinder motor, but you can hear the turbocharger, you hear the blow off from it. It's always, producing this deep sort of rumble as you drive it that sounds really good. Yeah, but the premium moniker is a little misleading. It does have like the suede upholstery, but there's really not a lot going on in the cabin that really feels premium at all. But it's got heated seats and a heated steering wheel, which is, that's all right. That's not really a premium thing anymore, but compared to like the Core edition, I suppose it is. Manual transmission, really fun to shift through the gears. The pedals, I really like the way the pedals are laid out. There's a little bit more of a space between the accelerator and the brake pedal, which I like because I've got these boats of feet, and so it makes it easier to really use those either on their own or in conjunction with each other with my feet. But yeah, it was nice to have a rear seat. I could put both kids back there, Lola in her car seat. I could put her behind me. She was a little bit squished with her feet, in the car seat, but not terrible. And I like it quite a bit. I would rather, there are lots of things I'd rather have though. I'd rather have a WRX. I would rather spend more money and get a Civic Type R for sure. That car is just, every time you drive it, it just kind of really blows your mind how good it is. It's a solid vehicle for sure.
I think I would probably spend a little less money and go with the GTI. That would be my move. And I prefer the WRX as well.
Yeah,
but yeah, they've done a lot with the Corolla. It's attractive. It's fun to drive. I think there are some people for which nothing else will do. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, it's just the right thing for a lot of people in terms of price and performance. It's really sort of a Goldilocks car for a lot of people, especially, Toyota fans too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they go nuts over it, which is awesome. I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad I've been able to drive the GR Corolla a couple times now. It's I enjoy driving it for sure.
Starts at 36.5, which that's a lot for a Corolla. I don't know. I know you get a fair amount of stuff, but I don't know. There's other things I would spend my money on. Let's put it
Definitely.
All right. Well, how about the Supra that you got to have some fun with? What did you do with your Supra?
I drove it all over the place.
As you should.
Just any chance I got, I took it out to the back roads. And, that was another one where my son just kept wanting to go for rides.
It's a fun one.
So that was great. It drives really well. I think I drove the Z4 like a year or so ago. I prefer the way the Supra behaves to that. This was the 3-liter and with the manual transmission, and really solid manual transmission. I really liked it. Nice sort of low effort throws between the gears. Good gearing. I spent a lot of time just driving it fast and throwing it around corners. I feel like it rotates a little better than the BMW too. It just seemed more responsive to the thoughts that were coming into my head. You know, it was a little more telekinetic. It was easier to sort of picture what the car would do, and then have that translate to the car actually doing that through, you know, your inputs. So yeah, that was really fun. I recommend it. And this, you know, was the anniversary edition. It had the big wing out the back. It was bright orange with that cool Supra decal stripe down the side. Yeah. But yeah, really solid car. Really fun to, you know, I was surprised at how well it launches too. Yeah, it got a decent amount of grip out of the rear tires, and it made for really fun, enthusiastic driving. It's something I would definitely consider it. Probably, I haven't driven the new Z, but I think it's just, to me, just seems more attractive than the Z. I don't know.
That's a tough one, man. Yeah. That's a tough one. I think everything you said is spot on. And I think, like, metrically, the Toyota's better, but I like the Z better, which is to say the right or the left brain, whatever the designer, creative, emotional side of your brain is. I liked the Z better. And that's the only way I can put it.
I like the design of the Z better. I just think it looks really good.
It's a little coarse to drive, though.
Yeah, and you know, I loved the last Z, but again, that was really old.
Yeah.
By the time it got replaced, but just on paper and the experiences I've had with the Supra, it's just really compelling that I would put it toward the top of that sports car list before I'd go out and drive the Z. That'd be like, you know, I have to go drive it just to make sure, you know, sort of thing. But I think the Supra would be the thing that gets me into that segment in the first place.
It's a good segment to be in.
Yes. And I'm looking forward to the day, not too quickly, but when you know, a 2-seater will make more sense in the family garage.
It's funny. I don't need to spend a lot of money, but there's multiple cars I want. You know what I mean? What you're saying, you know, it doesn't have to be like a ZR1, just a nice Corvette, or even a used Boxster, you know?
Yeah.
Like a 4Runner. It doesn't have to be a new one, maybe an old one, you know? I could be very happy if I could probably spend $120,000 on just these cars from at some point in the last 40 years that would be interesting to drive. And there'd probably be a new one in there that would take a lot of it, but maybe we should do that as a segment. You have $150,000 to spend. What cars do you get? How do you spend that money?
Yeah, and just have it be on cars that are all for just fun and driving from the past, you know, cars that you've always wanted to own. Don't think super practically about it.
We could even make a caveat, though, that you do have to, these are your cars. So, you know, if you want to spend $150,000 on a, you know, I don't know, an S-Class, you can do it. But if you want to get an old 4Runner, an old Boxster, something from the 70s, and maybe a Mazda 3, okay, there you go. So, I don't know. We need to riff on this. I like it.
Yeah. I do like the idea of just picking from some of the cars that have always just really stuck with you.
Yeah. There definitely would be a 3 Series in there somewhere too. Yeah. I'm not sure. It could be an older one, kind of one that's got some miles, a little bit of rust on it, but you're still driving a 3 Series, you know, and you get that steering, you get the chassis. Many of them, actually, the interiors hold up. I have another neighbor who has an older 3 Series, maybe we'll say 8, I think it's 15, 16 years old, somewhere in there. And the interior looks like you could eat. It's the brown leather tan setup. I mean, it looks, I've seen cars that are 5 years old that don't look as good as this guy's interior. So but the fenders are rusty. So I digress. Let's talk about this Kia EV9. I drove it last week. I had a great time with it. I drove this is the GT line with all-wheel drive. So I have 270 miles of range. The power figures, if you're curious, are 379 horsepower, 516 for the torque, dual motor all-wheel drive, 6-passenger seating with second row captain's chairs. No, I'm just reading straight from the Kia site. But that's what I drove. I liked it a lot. It was a beautiful shade of ocean blue. It had some of the black trim options, so that gave the wheel wells and the wheels themselves that pretty cool look. It definitely made a statement. Everybody saw me coming, wanted to know what I was driving, wanted to know, is that electric? What is that? Somebody asked me who KN was, and I had to explain to them that's a Kia's logo that they really, I think, need to change. I liked it a lot. I'm working on a piece. I started as 5 thoughts, but it's probably going to be more than that. There's a lot to unpack. I think it's an ambitious vehicle program for Kia. It's a 3-row electric that has competitive range, that they played it aggressive with the design. Literally, they've been making 3-row SUVs for 5 years, the Telluride, and now they're doing electric. How many automakers that have been around for 110 years haven't done those things? So I think it's very aggressive. Most of them, yeah. So I liked it. I give them a lot of credit for it. It's expensive.
Very but not
expensive.
as expensive as what else is out there that's electric with 3 rows.
Fair, very fair. This is 73.9 was the base. And again, this is like basically one of the very top trims. Yeah. You don't have to spend this much money. If you want to go rear wheel drive, it's 54, 55, call it, which I think is much more palatable, especially if you live in like Southern California or something. You don't really need all wheel drive unless you want the performance. Yeah. But you actually did the first drive, or one of the first drives with this. This is my second or third time in the EV9. So I feel pretty read into it. But what do you think? What's your take on this thing?
I love it.
Yeah,
I thoroughly love that car. It is a little more that I want to spend on a family vehicle, but you do get a lot of content with it. And there's just so many neat little features available. Like that reclining rear seat and that weird drawer that pulls out of the rear of the center console.
It is so good. That is, my kid loved that.
Yeah.
He thought he was on an airplane.
Man, if that was my car, I would go eat lunch in it every day.
Hyundai and Kia have the best center consoles, I think, outside of maybe some trucks, which really set up like a Ram. But I mean, their center consoles are killer.
Yeah. And it's surprisingly quick. It's not slow at all. It's pretty powerful, at least in the GT line. And yeah, it drives well on the highway. Really good driver assist tech. Really good to drive when you're not using the driver assist tech. And just, overall very comfortable.
Yeah.
Really unique in its looks. The third row is actually really good to use. I would sit back there without any complaints. Especially since you can move the second rows, you can adjust the second rows to give them more or less room. But when I sat it, when I drove it, I sort of set each row to me. I'm about 6 feet tall, so a 6-footer sitting behind a 6-footer, sitting behind a 6-foot driver. I was comfortable in each row like that. So if you had a car full of an EV9 full of John Snyders, each of those John Snyders would be happy. There's like lots of little ports for plugging in your devices if you're in the back, and really nice.
Yeah.
It's super smooth and super quiet, super comfortable. It definitely feels premium.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, multiple people were like, wait, this is a Kia? And oh, wow. And oh, wait, it costs how much? So there was a little bit of dissonance going on. But I mean, great value. It's a very nice vehicle. Obviously, it's an EV. You got to pay for it right now. And I think it's worth it. No major criticisms. I think it's the steering I found to be a little wonky at times. What did you think of that?
Yeah, that was the one thing. It was, as you would expect, pretty artificial feeling.
Maybe that's it.
And just not quite as connected as it could be, but I never really had any problems even throwing it around corners. And it doesn't lean as much too. I mean, that's true. It handles pretty well too. Like it's got a really good center of gravity. You'd think it would just tip right over, but it resists it pretty well.
Yeah, I don't know if I would even call it oversteer, but it was weird, that steering setup. But it was very nimble, good, handles the roads very well sorted. I took it on a fairly long drive. It was like a rainy, Tuesday morning. I went and just I need to put some miles on this thing. Went and got a bagel from Brugger's Bagels, which is very good. They have hash brown bagels. It's a new limited edition.
Ooh.
I recommend it. It's good. You don't even need cream cheese. So, and I'm going to put that in my story too, I think. I need to write this though before the limited edition bagel goes away.
Yeah.
But
I need to seek that out.
Yeah. Good visibility.
Yes.
Very good visibility. Reminded me of like an old Subaru Forester, to put it in your terms.
Yeah. And it has that digital rear view mirror, which if you have it packed to the gills with people and cargo, which is, something that we do with our Palisade all the time. We fill it up, and ours was before they offered the digital rear view. But having that in there is great, and you can sort of adjust the brightness and even the angle of it. So you can have it pointing where you want it, so you're not just looking at the top of the car behind you when it gets close, which is kind of nice. And it's really crisp and clear. When I drove that on the first drive, it didn't really happen with the EV9 because there was a little bit of dust here and there, but in the Sorrento, when we did the Sorrento X Pro, and we took that down some dirtier roads, the rear view camera could get gummed up a little bit. And then, you're looking out you flip it back to the regular mirror at that point.
I also, speaking of kind of like driver, tools, there's a lot of stalks coming out of the steering wheel thing. I mean, it's the Prindle is there. There's no low gear, but the Prind is there. Turn signals, windshield wipers. Am I leaving anything else out? I mean, literally it'll do everything but make breakfast for you coming out of that, center steering wheel area. And it was fine. A couple of times I did kind of get a little mixed up, or even just trying to go in forward or reverse, I would forget which way to twist it. I think with ownership, you get that versus a week-long loan. That being said, there is still a fair amount going on there. That is the trade-off for having this double-deck, cavernous center, console with a tray table. That's the trade-off. Is that?
Yeah,
so
true. Fair enough. That drive selector stock though is pretty aggressive. It's very big and funny looking, but you get used to it.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, honestly, despite how much they packed in there, still wasn't as, I would say, disconcerting as different gear selector, like some of the knob ones, they're stalking ones that I've used on different vehicles. So yeah, I like it. Overall, first time I drove this last fall, I got out of it, walked in, it was up for North American Utility Vehicle of the Year. I walked in and told my wife, I'm like, this is what I'm voting for. This thing is, walk off home run. It's really, really good. All right. Well, that's all the time we have this week. If you enjoy the podcast, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get this show. Helps us get the word out. We hope we can connect with other car fans and tell them about Autoblog and the Autoblog Podcast. If you have a question or you'd like to get in the mailbag or have us spend your money, that's podcast@autoblog.com. Hey, be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.